Hey, welcome everybody. We're excited to produce this content today. Everybody knows that AI is the hot topic. It's been a hot topic for several years now. And one of the things that are coming up are how do you prove compliance and risk management to AI to your different stakeholders? Are there certifications available? Are there audit tools? Are there frameworks available? And the answer is yes, there are a few. So we're going to cover one that I haven't heard a lot about today. A lot of our customers, a lot of the folks in the community are already doing SOC 2, and you can use SOC 2 to uniquely communicate your story around artificial intelligence. So, we're going to talk about the SOC 2 plus AI options for you and give you some details on how you do that, what the audits look like, the value of that, and really get you up to speed over the next 45 minutes or so. So, you have everything that you need to know. If you want to add SOC, if you want to add AI to your SOC 2 report, um, in way of quick, I guess, contents for today, what are we going to cover? So first of all, I think we're going to cover the business case for doing this and your available options. Right now, maybe your company is building an AI product, or you're just using AI internally, and you're thinking through: should I do anything? Should I get any kind of assurance report? Should I add any kind of framework to it? And we're going to talk about kind of a thinking model for a business case there. And then, like I said, several options, SOC 2 being one of those options to do that. And if you do choose to move forward with a SOC 2 option, we're going to talk about the structure of a report and a framework to add AI, and then give you some requirements that you should be considering if you want to add artificial intelligence as a criteria in a SOC 2 report. And then if you do choose that, we're going to talk about paths of becoming compliant. So, how would you implement a program like that? What are some of the key work streams, some of the key requirements that we're seeing if you're trying to build an AI risk management program? Really, implementation's a bit agnostic to SOC 2. It's kind of like just best practices around implementing AI. Then, specifically, if you wanted to tack that onto a SOC 2 report, and then we'll talk about what it looks like inside the report itself. So, if you were to get a SOC 2 report, if you're getting one already, where does it even fit into the report? What would your clients be seeing? And then we'll point you to some free resources on AI in general, including a course, but also some SOC 2 AI resources that we'll go through there. Let me do a quick intro. So, my name is Christian Hyatt. I'm the CEO, co founder of Risk 360. Just a little bit about Risk 360 and myself. So, I've done a ton of talks at this point, probably dozens of talks on AI and keynote presentations. I developed a course that thousands of students have taken, and our company is among the first to help organizations achieve ISO 42001 certification, which is the first available AI certification. And generally, we're just among the first helping companies build AI risk management programs. We also issue SOC 2 reports. So we're kind of uniquely positioned to talk about SOC 2 plus AI here. Um, More than theoretical, but how you could practically do that. So that's me and a little bit about Risk 360.
Phil Brudney, director here at Risk 360, CPA background, also spent years leading our privacy practice, and now with AI becoming such a big thing, also helping lead our efforts on ISO 42001 internal audits, implementations, and compliance.
But if you're wondering who Risk 360 is, the bottom line, I think we're in a very unique position to talk about this, kind of as I alluded to, because we do audits and certifications from an audit perspective. So we know those standards, we do them, we are those people. But we also do even more implementations of the standards. So we kind of get an opportunity to see all of these different standards, including AI, from both an auditor's perspective, but also someone practically implementing and managing those programs. And uniquely at Risk 360, we're also certified ourselves, and we're building an AI risk management program for ourselves. So I think because we're auditors, because we help build the programs, and because we manage our own program, between Phil and I, we can give you lots of different perspectives, and we hope that those are built in to the program. We've done over 2,000 assessments and 2,000 engagements. I think at this point, dozens of 42,001 in AI assessments. There's only, I think, at the time of this recording, I think there's under 50 official certifications, and we've been involved in many of them. So I think we're in as good a position as anyone to kind of talk on this topic. But anyway, that's a little bit about me and Phil and about Risk 360, and we'll dive right in here. So I'll cover the business case. So I think a good question to ask is, if you're already doing a SOC 2 report, why should you add AI in the first place? Because extra work, it's probably going to be extra costs and burden on the company to maintain that. So is it something that you should do? And as Phil and I were talking through this, I think there's three reasons that you might want to consider it if you're in that decision making process. Number one is risk management. I do think the model that we give you to add to this is just a good thinking model for decision making internally. My observation is that right now there's a huge appetite to implement AI tools and build AI products. There's just tons of opportunity for efficiency, for product innovation, for revenue if you're building those kinds of products. And anything that's slowing down decision making or responsible decision making is probably not good for your business. So you have to balance that speed to market with appropriate levels of risk taking. And I think this gives you a model to make those decisions and also defend those decisions. So I think that's important. The other thing that we're seeing from a business case perspective is that just like in security and privacy, customers are demanding some level of assurance around what you're doing with AI. We're already seeing it in contracts like outright prohibitions or audit reports and certifications related to AI. ISO 42001 is currently the only ISO certification available, but I think SOC 2 in the near future will be a very common way that companies choose to prove their compliance related to AI risk management. So if you're talking about building trust with customers, access to different marketplaces, meeting your contractual obligations, or just competitive storytelling, I think SOC 2 is pretty low hanging fruit for you to be able to do that with an obvious return on investment. And then the third thing I think you should consider in terms of adopting an AI risk management framework is just regulatory obligations. The number one regulation out there right now is the EU AI Act. So if you're doing business internationally or you're doing businesses with international companies, they're probably going to want you to comply with that. And this will be a good way to tell that story and evidence compliance. Also, up in the air right now is what the US is going to do from a regulatory perspective. We're seeing a variety of state level regulations like Colorado and Texas and California and others rapidly adopting regulations. But to counter that, at the time of this recording, I think we have the big beautiful bill that Trump put out, where he's recommending an outright ban for 10 years of any AI regulation. So just due to the uncertainty, there's a known regulation in the EU and the rest of the world. Here in the US, there's an uncertainty. So one of the good things to do when there's a high degree of uncertainty is to take a right-sized approach. And I think this represents a right-sized approach to manage your own risk, to meet potential regulations that are coming down, and also meeting those customer requirements if you're wanting to build trust. So those are three good reasons right now. I think that you should consider an AI risk management program and maybe formalizing that through a SOC 2 plus AI report.
Just highlight again, it's a very right-sized approach. There's a lot of flexibility in SOC 2 reporting in general that definitely applies to AI, but it allows you to, define the activities that are most critical for your business, so you can meet all those goals.
Yeah, I think that's right. And one thing, I think that's a great segue into like where AI fits into SOC 2 reporting, generally speaking, especially because SOC 2 is such a flexible framework. Like if you look at PCI or ISO, I think, or FedRAMP or pretty much any other framework, they're viewed as more rigid. Like there's a specific set of requirements where SOC 2 outlines criteria or even lets you make custom criteria. And then you're kind of flexible and how you approach those. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that and how AI fits into SOC 2 reporting, Phil?
Sure. I think it's a really kind of under-recognized principle of SOC 2 that at its core, it's a reporting framework. So people know about the trust services criteria. That's kind of the core of what people think about with SOC 2. But for a long time, the AICPA has envisioned the idea of a SOC 2 plus. So it's been common in the past with high trust or CSA star that you can add those to your SOC report, and then you actually receive an opinion that would cover those additional criteria as well as the trust services criteria that are part of the SOC report. So really, it's no different for AI. If you are able to define your criteria, the controls are available, and an auditor is able to test them, then you can include that within the SOC report, and your auditor can test those controls, report on them, and ultimately the opinion would then include a section that the AI controls are appropriately designed and operating effectively to meet your specific AI objectives and those criteria.
I think a good parallel that we've seen is HIPAA. HIPAA is a healthcare standard, but there's no HIPAA certification. So for a long time, healthcare companies wanted to say, hey, yes, I comply with HIPAA, but their customers might say, well, prove it to me. How do I know you comply with HIPAA? Because there's no certification. So what a lot of customers did is they adopted HIPAA criteria into a SOC 2 report so you could issue a HIPAA opinion. So it formalized how they evidenced compliance against HIPAA. I think this is similar. What we're saying is you can take SOC 2, come up with a custom set of criteria to evidence and get audited how you are choosing to comply and manage your risk related to AI. So it's more than just telling your customers and stakeholders, hey, I promise that we have an AI risk management framework. It's saying, no, this is the standard that we've set. They're audited by an independent auditor, and we've gotten an official opinion that yes, we do in fact live up to those standards that we've set for ourselves. And by the way, that's how it works for all these criteria. So even if you're getting a SOC 2 today with just security, it's the same exact approach. It's just here we're adding AI instead of maybe security or any other topic. So you're permitted to do that. And if you didn't know that, you can do that with any topic. In fact, if there's something else that you want to evidence you're managing your risk against, you're permitted and even encouraged to add that as a criteria. It's just a rarely exercised option. But in absent of other options, I think this is a great option to evidence your AI risk management story. You could also pair it with other frameworks like ISO 42001 or ISO 27001 to kind of create a harmonized program if you want to. So lots of options here. But there are some drawbacks. Phil, can you talk us through like what are some pitfalls? What are some things that folks should be thinking about?
Kind of the flip side of that flexibility in how you design the controls is there's not a standard. So what you choose might not be exactly what a business partner might be looking for, as there could be still some additional work before they'll do business with you. That's one piece. Of course, you want there to be a case, an ROI for doing it. So you can see a lot of great things, but if it doesn't speak to the market, then it wouldn't be a clear benefit for you. The other piece is really around how it relates to ISO 42001. So I think most notably, Microsoft and its SSPA program, one no longer accepts SOC 2, requires you to get audited against their specific criteria. But also, when they added AI, either last year or the year before, they said, yes, you can receive a 42001 certificate. You can substitute that for the audit against our criteria. But I think similarly, if they're not accepting SOC 2 for security, it probably won't work for AI either. And also, if you have specific requests from any party for ISO 42001 compliance, this tells a really good story. You can get it very similar to the 42001 controls, but it wouldn't be a guarantee that you wouldn't have to go through the actual 42001 certification process.
I think this is true just for everyone's situational awareness. It's like a question we often get is which framework should I go with? Whether it be SOC 2, ISO 27001, ISO 42000, whatever it might be. And it's a little bit like what's your favorite flavor of ice cream at a certain extent? Like healthcare vertical likes one standard a little more. The startup industry likes another standard a little bit more. So it's kind of like that. It really comes back to that business case. It's like, what industry are you serving? Who are the stakeholders that are the readers of the report? Does it meet your requirements as a business to either manage your own risk or to prove your compliance? So just kind of think through that before you make a decision. And I think that's true for any framework, though. And most of our clients end up where they have to do multiple frameworks to meet those requirements. And that's just kind of the nature of things, but just something to think through. Cool. So let's dive into a little bit of the how. That's the what. There's this SOC 2. There's this opportunity to add an AI criteria. We're thinking through why you should do that. So how could you go about doing that? So there's really three steps if you want to add AI to your existing SOC 2 report, or if you're getting SOC 2 for the first time and you want to do that. The first step is this is an AI CPA term. It's called design of controls. So what that effectively means is you need to figure out what set of controls that you want to adopt to put into the report, and they need to make sense to you. Like with Risk 360, we could totally help you with that. That's not something you're doing on your own. We have a great set of controls. We have lots of options. We can help you build something that is a right size fit for you, but it also is somewhat custom to you. If you're building an AI product versus you're using Copilot or Chat GPT internally, those are different use cases. So you want to think about that a little bit. But an experienced advisory or an audit firm should be able to help you through that. But you do need to take that step because, as Phil said, there's not a standard set of SOC 2 controls for any category, including security. And then once you do that, what we typically recommend is that you do a gap assessment against those controls. It's really the pretest. You get to go through, see where you're at with those gaps, make sure that you're actually running the controls the way you think you are, that everybody understands their roles and responsibilities, and get those gaps documented on paper. And then you have an opportunity to go resolve those gaps. So for most of our customers, we'll do that gap assessment. Then there'll be a period of remediation, and we're kind of spot checking, maybe even providing some advisory because you might want to say, hey, look, this is what we did. Does that make sense? Is that what you were looking for? And we can go back and forth in that. With Risk 360, we even have a platform called Full Circle. It's our GRC platform where we're collaborating in, so we can go back and forth on all that stuff to validate the evidence. And then once the audit firm and you feel really good that you're ready to go, then you kind of go into the live drill where you do the audit field work. And if you've ever been through an audit, it's going to feel just like that. You're doing walkthroughs, you're providing evidence to the auditor, they're reviewing that evidence, and ultimately they're going to arrive at opinion. And that's when you get that SOC 2 report. And what a SOC 2 report with AI would look like is exactly like an existing SOC 2 report. So you would go through and we have an opinion. There'd be a system description when we talk about IA or AI in kind of a paragraph format. And then if you've ever seen a SOC 2 report, there's a section in the back that's kind of table format that outlines all of your controls, the auditor's test procedures, as well as like what the conclusion of those test procedures were. It would look just like that, except for there would be a whole new criteria just for AI and for you, and we'd give you an opinion on that. So very typical to a standard SOC 2 report, just including AI. And then the other thing that we often recommend is building a trust and communication package for that, especially for something as nuanced as this AI edition, because that might be new to the marketplace. So even if you're doing only security, we always say, like, in addition to the formal SOC 2 report, which can be very lengthy, maybe make a one pager or add it to your trust center or some type of more marketing document that's easier to read, this kind of a digest that you can provide more broadly to your customers. And that's something we could help you through and walk you through what that could look like. So generally speaking, that's what it looks like. It should be a very collaborative approach with your SOC 2 auditor. In terms of what types of criteria can you expect, so what Phil and I did is we basically took the two most popular AI risk management frameworks, which happens to be the NIST risk management framework and ISO 42001, and pulled out those categories and objectives and suggest them in human readable format. In each of these frameworks, they might use different words to kind of talk about the same thing. We've digested that down into about 10 different things. I'm not going to read all of these. This is an excellent opportunity for a screenshot if you want to, or if you look at the link in the description of this, there's a link so you can download this whole deck and all the materials and grab these for yourselves. But at a high level, you need governance, so a risk committee or something that's going to govern AI. You need all of your different policies in place to govern AI. Typically, you want the right organizational structure to support that. So, in some use cases, maybe it's your CTO or your CISO who governs AI. Uh, at scale, I've even seen AI ethics officers or chief AI officers in certain circumstances. Making sure that you're resourced well, that people are given time and tooling to manage AI risk. Um, there's a couple nuanced things like doing an AI risk assessment. So if you're familiar with security, what a security risk assessment is a well-worn path. People kind of know what that is, but you'll need to do an AI risk assessment and also what is called an AI system impact assessment. Um, those are a little bit nuanced. So what I'll refer you back to is ISO 42005, who provides some detailed guidance on what an AI system impact assessment is. But basically, what that is it is you asking and answering the question, what's the potential impact to individuals or groups based on the tool that you're building? Building AI into your product development lifecycle, having certain toll gates if you're going to add new features related to AI, managing those, looking at things like what data trains your AI or influences the AI. Other things like use cases, like I alluded to earlier, if you're building a product, like we have one customer whose product is non-standard credit scores for mortgage loans. Like that's it's pretty clear how that could negatively impact someone. That's a intense AI use case versus another use case of maybe you're using Chat GPT to help you with copywriting. That's much lower risk. So clarifying those types of things and building that into your acceptable use policy and how you're managing risk. And then kind of criteria here that we lay out is thinking about how to integrate AI into your own supply chain and third party risk. So if you're already doing security questionnaires, what questionnaires related to AI you be asking your customers? If you're already including security clauses in your contracts with vendors, should you have AI clauses in your contract with customers? So that's it. That's like the 10 basic criteria. I know that was very, very fast. We'll do whole separate videos on diving into the risk management frameworks a little bit more deeply. In general, those are the types of criteria that you would probably want to add to your SOC 2. And I'll point you to the NIST risk management framework as well as ISO 42001 if you're just looking for some frameworks that give you a flavor of what this could look like.
So one thing that we talk about a lot as we do more and more of these 42001 implementations and help companies with their AI programs. I think something we're able to do is add some clarity around, Christian alluded to, your role in the AI ecosystem. So the AI Act calls out 4 specific roles. It's not always clear what controls go with what role. So with the criteria we develop for the SOC 2, we're able to tailor those closely based on your role. Of course, your use case, like Christian mentioned, but it's something that I think the market's still thinking through. People are still trying to understand, but we're dealing with more and more as companies are looking to get compliant, manage risk, get certified.
Yeah, we see that similar in privacy. I think GDPR calls it controller and processor. AI, some of the roles are at a high level. It's like, are you developing a language model? Are you developing a product that uses AI, or are you using a Chat GPT wrapper? So those would be like the examples of types of roles, and you need to define that, and they have words to define that. But obviously, depending on what you're doing, the level of risk is going to dictate which criteria and controls are applicable to you. I think the trap we've seen some companies fall into is they're really not doing anything that complex, but they adopt the controls of someone like OpenAI that's developing a model, and it's way too heavy-handed. It doesn't fit, or vice versa. You adopt something that's too light based on the risk that you're doing it, and so you want to think through that. What are the appropriate controls? But again, a company like Risk 360 or a competent auditor should step you through that quite clearly and help you out there. Great addition. And then I started thinking about if you're implementing a program, what are some of the key work streams to implement your AI program? At a high level, this is how we're seeing it shake out as we're doing implementations. Number one, you need to think about establishing a risk council, how you're going to monitor the program, how you're going to make key decisions in terms of governance. So getting the right people at the table, your CTO, legal, product team, whoever that makes sense for you that's going to make those decisions and govern it. You need to establish that governance committee. If you're doing security, you probably already have something similar, like some kind of security committee. It's probably a lot of the same people, but maybe they're talking about different things. So establish that governance structure. Next is policies. So either integrating, and I have another slide on this just in a second. There'll be a great screenshot opportunity to talk about policies, but either integrating AI into an existing policy set and then developing some net new policies. So you might need an AI policy standalone, but you might want to integrate it into your acceptable use policy and your SDLC. So some policy updates. There's a whole risk management program. Two of the most important ones that we talked about are doing an AI risk assessment and an AI system impact assessment. Those would be new activities for most companies if you're not already doing something similar. And then the implied task is you're going to have to keep a risk register. You're going to figure out how to communicate those risks up to your governance committee. You're going to have to make decisions on mitigation strategies. That probably sounds very familiar if you're already doing that for security, but you're going to have to do it for AI as well. Thinking about how you're going to monitor the controls. So, for example, ISO has an internal audit requirement. SOC 2 has a less formal requirement around monitoring. So, you're at liberty to figure out what monitoring means for you. But generally speaking, some type of periodic spot check or internal audit of the controls and how things are going will be necessary. Another work stream I'd think about is just the whole engineering stack. There's a lot to think about there. So how are you going to implement AI into your system development lifecycle? How are you going to do monitor data, like data cleanliness? If you think about data retention strategies, um, security by design. There's also AI trust by design. So all of that, all of those same topics that exist in engineering for security are really applied to AI as well. So you need to think through how AI is going to impact you there. And then the last work stream is integrating AI into your existing third party risk management program. SOC 2, if you're already doing SOC 2, you know that SOC 2 requires you to do vendor management and around security. You would also need to do that same stuff for AI in terms of adding it to your questionnaires and maybe your contracts, so on and so forth. At a very high level, there's, I guess, 6 different work streams that you'd probably have to think through as you're implementing this that we find very, very common. Another screenshot opportunity here, because I mentioned AI policies. I don't want to talk through every one of these, but these are a set of policies that pretty much every one of our clients are adopting in one shape or another. And again, the common motion that I'm seeing right now is either it is a net new policy, like if you don't have an AI management system and you're doing 42001, that's going to be brand new. Uh, if you don't have an AI policy today, you're going to have to create an AI policy. But most companies do have risk management policies and appropriate use policies and things like that. So it would probably be an addition into those policy sets. Phil, any thoughts that you want to add into like just implementation process, what you're seeing there?
Just want to highlight the governance piece, really the first step, because it's so critical to get the right stakeholders involved. It might look a little different than exactly what you've done for security, even for privacy. There's just so much happening in AI, a lot of nuance. Everyone wants a piece of it. They want to use AI, but who are the people who know what's going on? Who are the people who need to make decisions? Like those are critical factors that you need to keep in mind when you're starting with that governance piece so that everything else you do can be effective.
That's a great point. One of the things that I'm seeing that catches a typical GRC professional or security professional off guard is that when it comes to security, I think there's kind of a sense of how much risk a company is willing to take. Like there's a set of best practices, and we've kind of all agreed as a marketplace. There's like a general risk appetite for security and a generally agreed upon set of best practices. But when it comes to AI, I think the risk appetite is way higher than what most security and GRC professionals expect. And the reason the risk appetite is so high from leadership is because there's a huge amount of opportunity on the other end. Either opportunity to gain some major efficiencies or opportunities to bring brand new products to market that have huge revenue opportunities. So what you're hearing leaders say is, yes, we're willing to accept that risk, move forward. And that might be counterintuitive to a typical GRC or security professional who thinks they have a good intuition on what an acceptable amount of risk is. So the reason that matters is because when you're establishing that AI governance committee, you need some folks very authorized and also attached to the business well enough to either to give you that information to tell you, no, we're moving ahead. We got to do this. There's huge business opportunities or huge risks we're trying to mitigate. In security, you might not have a product owner or even a CEO at a small company on the risk council. But when it comes to AI, you might need that level of person who's attached to the market forces and can make those kind of decisions. So let's go on to Phil. You want to cover this one? Let's talk about like just options when it comes to proving compliance.
The goal of SOC 2 or any compliance initiative you undertake is you need to show someone that you are compliant. So customers and prospects typically top of mind, revenue directly attached there. With AI in particular, board of directors and executives like Christian just talked about, they want to harness the opportunity, push forward. This helps them understand some of their risk posture as they're trying to take those opportunities. Regulators and potential litigants, when people are coming in with questions about the AI program, it's important to have a story to tell them. So with your program, you produce a lot of artifacts that are good to show them. The further you go with the SOC plus AI or another framework, the more you're able to, you have a defensible approach to show anyone who's looking that, look, we took the right steps. We did these things to use AI responsibly, develop responsibly. So we've done all these good things.
I love the word defensible approach because if I'm talking to a CEO and their risk appetite is high, and they want to bring a product to market, as a GRC professional trying to protect them and the business, the thing I'm going to say is, well, let's have a defensible approach. That way, if something does go wrong, we can point to a set of best practices to prove out that we were doing good things. And sometimes that means a lot, whether it's official litigation or if it's a threat of litigation. You can point back to a set of best practices that you were aligned to. That's very powerful, I think.
Absolutely. We've been talking here about the SOC 2 report is a great way to demonstrate your AI compliance. Christian also mentioned like going further, having a trust center where you're able to put it front and center that we've already taken these steps around responsible AI and AI compliance. The AI transparency report is another piece that will go into a little more detail on your AI practices, all the good things you're doing. Makes great material when you're into that sales cycle and trying to answer hard questions. And then also, tying into contractual requirements. You can highlight those in any of the above, but when the questions come in, everything you've done, you're able to show compliance. And then, yeah, on the website, you want to highlight AI as much as you're highlighting security and privacy. Like can't say it enough. It's top of mind today. So people are looking for that fact that you've done something and you're able to communicate about it. So all of these good ways to show all the things you're doing right and get ahead of questions, get ahead of potential issues by putting it out there, being able to explain your program.
What we've covered today, I think there's a great business case. Ultimately, you're going to have to prove out AI compliance, either now or in the future. If you're building AI products or if they're core to your business, I think you could choose to do ISO 42001 certification. You could, if you're already doing SOC 2, I think SOC plus AI makes a lot of sense. I think, the marketplace is going to require it, contracts are going to require it, regulators are going to require it. So it's just something that should be on your mind. I like this option because SOC 2 is so prolific that it might be easy enough for you to add it on. We have a lot of SOC 2 customers. Like, we should be talking to all of them about just an easy AI add-on to tell that story. So I think it's really important. I think in terms of a framework to adopt it, I think referencing 42001 or NIST risk management framework are good options to step you through. Like I said, an auditor, someone like Risk 360, we could step you through the nuts and bolts of adding AI to a program. And what it's going to look like is it's going to look like a readiness assessment and then the official audit and then getting that report. The readiness assessment, I know a lot of you probably already have a SOC 2 report. I would be thinking about that a few months ahead of my live SOC 2 audit so you can have time to get ready and to remediate and then integrate it into your natural SOC 2 life cycle headed into the year. I think that's very doable if you give yourself 3 to 6 months to think through that. Something very feasible, and then ultimately adding it to your report and then telling the world about it. I think there's a lot of goodness to be had there. So if that journey is something that you're interested in, you can check out our whole downloadable compliance pack here. So there is in the link in the description here. There is a compliance pack. So if you want this whole presentation to take back, if you want that step-by-step guide, if you want an example framework, and then also, of course, this video that you can share with anyone in your team, that's all available in that downloadable. Not featured here is if you're just generally interested in AI risk management, we've put together a whole course. So you can just Google or look on YouTube, Risk 360 ISO 42001 course. It's a free course that we've put together. So between this compliance pack and that course, I think it'll set you up for a lot of success to have the nuts and bolts on how to do this. You can also just reach out to us. So you can reach out to me or Phil at Risk 360. It's our first name, Phil Brudney at Risk 360, or Christian Hyatt at Risk 360. It's Christian.Hyatt at Risk 360. And, we'll point you in the right direction. Happy to set up calls or refer you to any of this material. So, Phil, thanks for your time. And we appreciate all you watching and hopefully it's helpful.